Thank you for tuning in to the Voice of the Victim podcast. We discuss a lot of sad and potentially triggering things on this show. We try to be as sensitive and cautious as possible, but if you are sensitive to things involving abuse and may be triggered, please think twice before listening to our show.
Welcome to the Voice of the Victim podcast. My name's Ryan.
And I'm Rosie.
How are you doing tonight, Rosie?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you, Ryan?
Good. I'm glad. I'm well, too. Enjoying the nice rainy day for the 15th day in a row.
I was going to say, we've had so much rain, even hail today.
Yeah, that was wild.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard some thunder.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting weather we got here. And it hasn't been very warm yet.
No, it's been very disappointing weather.
Anyway, welcome to our show. We appreciate you being here. Thanks for stopping by. Today, we're talking about a pretty popular case. Recently, NBC's Peacock streaming service put out an exclusive show about John Wayne Gacy. I think most of you have probably heard of him if you're interested in true crime. He did so many awful things to so many people, and we're going to do a deep dive into it in a series of episodes because it's just too much for one episode.
Mm-hmm.
But if you haven't heard of him, he's often referred to as the killer clown in popular media. But there are at least 33 victims because of this monster. So it's a pretty huge case. So that said, we'll do our best to tell their story. But today we're going to start with talking about John Wayne Gacy's childhood, because I think it may have played a significant role in what happened. And I'll talk more about it later, but are you ready to dive into this rabbit hole with me, Rosie?
Head first.
All right.
John Wayne Gacy was born on March 17th, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois, to Catholic parents John Stanley and Marion Elaine Gacy. John Sr. was a World War I veteran and auto mechanic whose grandparents had immigrated to the U.S. from Poland.
Now, according to John, he had a close relationship with his mother and two sisters, but not with his father. There were some things John claimed about his childhood and that others corroborated that, like we mentioned earlier, may have had an impact on him.
John's father was said to be an alcoholic who was physically abusive to his wife Marion, as well as John and his two sisters, Karen and Joanne. But according to John, he got the really short end of the stick, always being compared to his sisters by his father, who belittled him for not living up to them.
Now, I hate to give a voice to someone who did such horrible things. Actually, I said that last night watching the Peacock documentary.
Mm-hmm, you did.
It made me really uncomfortable because they're basically giving this serial killer a platform to express himself. But this info we're talking about is out there already, and if these things are true, I think they definitely could have had a damaging effect on the way John turned out. Or he could just be saying this stuff as an excuse. I can't say for sure. But either way, being treated badly by another person never justifies deciding to harm other people yourself, but it can help answer the why behind the things that happened and figure out what can prevent or what could have been done differently to prevent things, the things that happened. So that said, you ready to continue?
Mm-hmm. John claimed that his first memory from childhood was when he was 4 years old. He was beaten with a leather belt for accidentally messing up some car engine parts that his father had laid out for assembly. Then, when he was 6, he walked out of a store with a toy truck, and again he was beaten by his father.
At some point, he claimed he was knocked unconscious during one of these beatings by a broomstick.
Ooh. In 1949, around age 7, John and one of his friends were playing with a 15-year-old girl who had intellectual disabilities, and had been caught touching her inappropriately. This led to another beating with a razor strop. What is that?
I will explain it. It's basically used to like adjust and shine up straight razor blades.
Oh,
You know that
never.
people use to shave?
Oh, like the old-fashioned kind?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they usually have like a handle on them, like wood or metal, and then like a little clip on the other end that's metal. So it would hurt. It's a leather strap, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It would hurt to get hit with that. But this is just a really bad situation all around.
Right.
Obviously, it's horrible to take advantage of a disabled person, but he was 7 years old. Does a 7-year-old really understand what they're doing in that situation?
That's a really good point.
I know I wouldn't have when I was 7, but this is not a good situation when you're developing.
I think at age 7, you do have the ability to know somewhat right from wrong, but the way that this was handled did not help
Yeah.
and did not correct.
And I mean, when I was 7, I did not have a clue what sex was.
Right.
If I was touching someone inappropriately, I wouldn't have even known it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I guess, what I'm saying.
Now, at some point, John was caught taking his mother's underwear, and this apparently really amped up the verbal abuse from his father, who berated him and called him names, implying he was too stupid to be successful at anything in life. This got worse when Marion tried to shield John from his father's abuse. John Sr. called him a sissy and mama's boy who would probably grow up queer.
Yeah, so John Wayne Gacy's father does not sound like a great dude. But even after all this abuse, John still seemed to love his father and tried to look for approval from him. But he never felt like he was living up to his father's expectations. And I don't even know if he knew what his father's expectations were. But whatever they weren't what John was. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I also do want to bring back up what we mentioned earlier, that John's father was a World War I veteran. World War I started July 28th, 1914, and lasted to November 11th, 1918. So John Stanley Gacy, John Wayne's father, was born on June 20th, 1900, which means the war started just a month after his 14th birthday.
Whoa.
So if he was a veteran in that war, you know, he went into the army right at age 18 if he did it legally. And there's also documentation of soldiers who somehow slipped into the military as young as age 12.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible he could have served even earlier. But either way, as a teenager going off into the Great War, the biggest war that had ever happened. So he had a lot different childhood than his son, John Wayne Gacy, had, which could have been a contributing factor to, how he treated his son.
Oh, I'm sure it had a huge factor.
Yeah, so it just all adds to this horrible situation. But anyway, let's get back to John Wayne Gacy's childhood.
Another disturbing event was said to have happened in 1949, when a local contractor and family friend was giving 7-year-old John Wayne Gacy a ride in his truck, and he was molested by that man. John said he was too afraid to tell his father about it because he thought his father would blame him for it. He knew that his father already thought he was effeminate and obviously hated it, making the boy pay for it with beatings.
We all know how damaging abuse can be on its own, but when it goes unreported like this and the survivor never gets therapy or is even blamed for it, then the damage can be even more severe than, if it is handled correctly. Obviously, John Wayne Gacy wasn't growing up in an atmosphere where it was okay to talk about these things or to report it. And, that's why this situation in the truck didn't get reported. And I also wonder if this molestation happened before the situation with the girl.
That would make sense.
Like if that's where he kind of learned about it.
Right.
But again, like we've said in the past, this is why it's so important you don't have to teach your kids about sex to teach them what's inappropriate. If someone does touch you in this spot, you know that it's not okay, and you can tell me about it.
Right.
Just making sure that they can feel comfortable coming to you and that they know it's not their fault. Because in this situation, it seems like John's father made him feel like everything was his fault, and so he couldn't talk about it.
When John went to school, his doctors told him to avoid all sports because he had a heart condition. John became overweight at a young age. When he was in 4th grade, he started having blackouts, which led him to being hospitalized often. In 1957, at age 15, his appendix burst. This led to him missing a lot of school, which made his grades decline.
And when John's father visited him in the hospital after one of these blackouts, he openly accused him of faking it to gain attention and sympathy in front of everyone. And, you would hope that wasn't true, but even if it was, I would just hope that a father would try to find out why his son feels the need to fake it.
And talk to him about it privately?
Yeah. And be understanding that there's probably a deeper reason. But again, like we already talked about, by the time he was 18, John's father was a war vet. So after everything he had been through, he probably did think that this was ridiculous. So it's just like I keep saying, a terrible situation. But Gacy's medical condition was never conclusively diagnosed, which could mean he was faking it, but who knows? Obviously, he was dealing with a lot.
Maybe he was getting bullied all the time, and that was his way of getting out of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good guess. This episode of Voice of the Victim podcast is supported by Best Fiends. And you've heard us talk about Best Fiends a lot. It's the colorful and fun puzzle game with literally thousands of levels, tons of cute characters that you can collect. If you're tired of the same old puzzle games, Best Fiends is the game for you because they have something new every day, including events, challenges, and new levels to keep you entertained. I also enjoy that it keeps my mind active with challenging but fun and casual puzzles. So Rosie, what's going on in your little world of Best Fiends?
Well, this week I wanted to give you guys a little tip because I'm such a pro.
I can definitely use that.
On the lower right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a tiny orange tile. On that tile is a bug. When you press it, it's going to show all the little critters that you've collected throughout your challenges and levels. What I really like about this page is that it shows little arrows pointing upwards, and that means those are the bugs that you can upgrade.
Oh.
And then it helps you on your levels.
Very good to know. I will be using that shortly.
And I would also like to let you guys know my favorite bug of the day.
Who's that?
Howie.
Oh, Howie. What a cutie.
He's a little gecko guy, and he's got glasses and a wand.
Yeah. I really enjoy the epic music that plays when you accomplish something. It's just satisfying.
Super, and especially when you're making your matches. Well, and it clicks. It goes...
Oh, yeah, in the puzzle.
When you're swiping as many as you can.
It's just a very well-crafted game. I very much appreciate it. One more cool thing is that you don't need to be connected to the internet to play the game or progress through your levels. So join us and millions of other people who are already playing this fun puzzle game. You can download Best Fiends for free on the Apple App Store or Google Play today. That's friends without the R, Best Fiends.
Someone who knew John from high school remembered seeing John's father ridicule or beat him several times, unprovoked, right in front of people. One time in particular, he remembers John Sr. coming up out of the basement drunk and assaulting his son for no reason. On that occasion, his mother tried to intervene, but she couldn't stop him. The friend said John would never fight back, but just put his hands up to defend himself.
Yeah. So that's what we know of John Wayne Gacy's childhood. Obviously, it's pretty rough. But I wanted to talk kind of candidly because, when we first started this podcast, we actually covered a lot of cases of people who had committed horrible crimes after being victims of abuse themselves, because those cases really show the cascading damage that abuse can potentially cause. And like I said at the beginning, I'm not we don't want to give a voice to a serial killer, someone who did so many horrible things. But we do think there's an opportunity to learn from it. We know a lot of amazing survivors with hearts of gold who would never hurt another person, no matter what they went through. They wouldn't take that and turn it into something else that would hurt someone. But in a lot of cases, these horrible monsters had suffered some type of abuse during their formative years as a child. And I'm not saying it's easier when it happens at a later age, because I have no idea. I've never been through something like this. But I do think that when abuse happens while the brain's developing, that it makes sense that it can have a lot longer lasting consequences, because it does kind of get ingrained into you, you know. Which leads me to my real point about just being aware of the signs of abuse, so we can all do our part to prevent it as much as possible. Abuse can destroy a person's psyche and turn them into something they might not have otherwise been. Where John Wayne Gacy took it after his abuse was a complete disgrace and totally inexcusable. I'm not trying to say that it is an excuse. I'm just saying that these 33 deaths may have been avoided if the abuse never happened, or even if someone would have stepped in to stop it and then gotten John therapy. So as he was growing up, he knew that it wasn't his fault and was able to learn from what happened to him. You know, seems like he just compartmentalized it, and it just became like a dark cloud in his life. It seems like not something that he could learn from and feel empowered by later, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I guess it's really interesting to me. I would like to have a list of actual serial killers or people like this that are famous that didn't have the abuse in their childhood, because it does seem to be a huge common denominator.
Yeah.
I mean, I do want to give John Sr. like a little bit of a break, because I can't imagine being in a war like that so young.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So he obviously picked up a lot of coping skills that weren't very helpful from the war, right?
Well,
like violence and
yeah.
and his mentality of what a man should be, and you know what I mean?
Well, I would equate the experience of serving in a war like that to abuse. Because it's an abuse on the psyche. It's not a natural experience that a person's supposed to have,
I mean,
especially as a teenager.
How many people do you think John Sr. killed? But it was okay because it was part of being in the war, you know?
Yeah.
Like, he probably saw a lot of stuff, and just, it was in the 40s, so he probably didn't have a way to...
No, the war was in the early...
Oh, yeah, in the teens.
Yeah.
So he probably didn't get any therapy or any mental help.
Yeah, I wouldn't guess he did.
So, yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of kids that grew up with dads in the war like this, so young especially, probably do have lots of issues.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the experience of serving in the war so young was kind of the start of the cycle of abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like you were just saying, the things he had to experience as a teenager, and then not having any coping mechanisms after, or any therapy to try to help him deal with everything he experienced.
Mm-hmm.
He had to compartmentalize that too, and then carried it into his family life.
Right.
And hurt the people around him. And then those people, well, one of those people went on to hurt more people in the future. It just shows how valuable therapy is. No matter what kind of, whatever causes your PTSD, getting therapy is so important, just to be able to move past it and not turn it into something that affects other people in a negative way.
Going down a different street, when we were watching that documentary, which we didn't watch it that much yesterday because we were both like, this is weird. But he was so calm and nonchalant, which I know he's been in prison for a really long time now. But it was really weird thinking about how he didn't seem very humble or like tail between his legs the way you would Hope,
No.
someone who killed
It was
over
very
30 people.
matter of fact.
Yeah, it was very icky. And when he went into the warden's office to do the interview, and he had his big binder of information he had collected, and he pulled out like a M&M bag, and I'm just like, gross, put those M&Ms away. It was just,
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that really bugged me. Like, you're gonna have a snack while you talk about all the people that you murdered? Nice.
Well, and that's why it felt so weird, is
Yeah.
because he's a serial killer, and here they're giving him this platform to take out his binder and talk about all of the things that he sees in his mind as his accomplishments that made him famous.
And the interviewer guy was like, hey, can we take off his handcuffs? And they're like, yeah, why not? Like, no, don't. Why does he get to be like this guy eating a snack, talking about his accomplishments, like nonchalant, chill?
Well, the interviewer guy did have a reason for taking the handcuffs off. He wanted the cameraman to watch his hands anytime he was struggling with a question for his body language.
That's true. The interviewer seemed like he had a thing for John. It was weird.
Yeah, like it was...
I don't know if it was like romantic or just an obsession or what the deal was, but he also gave me the creeps.
Yeah.
So he's like, I started writing him once a week, and then I called him every day.
But we haven't finished we haven't even finished the first episode of it yet. Like we said, we just got weird vibes, and we will finish it before we finish the series because we want to get as much information as we can. But
just a really strange yuck, like ick. Why would you want to even make a documentary about John Wayne Gacy? I mean, I know, but
well, we're making a podcast about it.
I know, but we're not talking to him.
Yeah, it's definitely not something I could do, to be in person looking a murderer in the eyes, especially a serial killer who killed 33 people. That
we know of. I mean, there could be more.
Yeah.
If I remember right, he was like, quote unquote, something about how people assume he was this guy always searching for a new victim, but he wants to make sure people realize that he was a really busy guy. And I'm like, but what?
Yeah.
Why do you care? You did do that, though. So strange.
Yeah. Like this whole episode has been talking about, he's a very messed up guy. Mm-hmm. Like, obviously, to be able to do this to people, you have to be messed up.
Right. True.
But like you said, it's just not the demeanor you'd expect someone to have after they've spent time in prison for doing something like this. You'd hope they'd be more like, I can't believe I did that, you know.
But he didn't say it. Sorry to cut you off.
No, I'm glad.
The part that we watched yesterday, never did he seem apologetic. No. Ever. That's how you know, like, he's a real bad guy. Like, not 1 ounce of sincere apology. Yeah. Not even a fake apology.
I mean, those people are the most dangerous to society. Mm-hmm. I wish I knew how much of an impact his childhood had on who he turned into, because he almost seemed numb to reality and to empathy. Like he was incapable. Well, I guess that's like sociopathy, huh? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was diagnosed with anything. We'll get into that in the coming episodes.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
But, I mean, that's definitely how it seemed.
Ugh. He's just one bad dude. And then another part when the interview guy, I wish I could remember his name, like the guy who wants to make this doc or wanted to. He recorded all of his calls with John Wayne. And one of them, he's like, how are you, John? And John was like, well, I've gained 25 pounds.
In like a month.
Yeah. And he's like, how did you do that? And I'm just like, how do you do that when you're in prison? Like, aren't you eating mush? Like, I don't know.
Well, and they're just like shooting the breeze like old buddies.
Yes, they were. And he's like, oh, you're such a funny guy, John. Oh, yuck. I didn't like it at all.
I don't know if that's a direct quote. You're such a funny guy. I don't want to paint the character of the interviewer in a bad way. It's just, it was a weird vibe how interested he was in John. But yeah, I guess if not for that interview, we wouldn't have been looking into this.
Right.
So I definitely, of all the things I read, his childhood is what stuck out to me the most. There was one more thing that popped into my head while you're talking, and now I can't think of it. It's so typical. Do you have anything else to say?
Not about the case. I need to watch another episode to get more.
All right. Well, do you have something else to say besides the case?
Just that I hope our listeners appreciate every flush of their toilet, because we didn't have water for a few days because our well pump was bad, and it was probably really difficult, and I feel very first world privilege right now.
Yeah.
Saying that.
Well, we definitely realize how much we take running water for granted, because it was like...
It was really terrible.
We were so excited last night when the water was finally working. Like, we never thought we'd be that excited about running water.
No, never. That was weird when we got the running water, and I was like doing touchdowns and backflips and
touchdowns.
You know, like fake jump in the air,
like a touchdown celebration.
Yeah,
dance.
that's what I mean.
That's all right.
Just some wild stuff.
Rosie doesn't watch football. So anyway, that's where we'll wrap it up for the story. But we do have a review to share.
Oh, yeah. Let me pull it up.
Do you want to read that, Rosie?
Sure. It says, Ryan and Rosie, it is so refreshing to hear a compassionate podcast tackling the issues they feel are important. The empathy you have when shining a spotlight on cases that need attention is admirable. I was looking back through old reviews, and it's so cool to see how you've changed. I've been a listener since Erica Parsons, and grown in that was in parentheses, by the way, and grown in response to critiques, less interruption, more conversational, etc. This is a podcast I re-listen to because it is moving and informative and has lovely hosts. Give the cats a head scratch for me. Aw, Lee and Tia. Done.
Thank you. You know what? Speaking of re-listening to episodes, I think we may have reread this review. Doesn't it seem familiar to you?
Oh, really? I don't know.
I wasn't sure because it was still on our unread reviews list that I make. But I don't know if that was just a personal mistake of mine. My memory's not good enough.
Oh, I guess I'm not sure.
But either way, thank you for this review. You know, if we can't remember it exactly where it was, then maybe it's just from reading it in the past and it being on our list that I remember it. I don't know. As you can tell, we are very casual when it comes to our structure. And we try to be as real as possible. And I know for some people, they don't like it because it's not scripted enough or organized enough. But
it's not parcasty enough.
Yeah. But that's just who we are, you know? I don't think I could build... Am I saying you know too much? I don't think I could make a podcast that's just strictly scripted and by the book, because that's just not in my wheelhouse.
You know?
I didn't even say it that time.
I know, I'm just...
But thank you so much to all of you who listen and who stuck around with us. We really appreciate all of you. And we love hearing from you. So if you have been thinking about writing in, or even if you've written in before, feel free to talk to us. You know, we usually reply. You know what?
After a while.
Yeah. Like I said, this case that we're about to tackle is very huge with 33 people. So
right.
I'm not sure how many episodes it'll be yet. We'll try to fit as much as we can into the next episode. Of course, this week's is a little shorter. We've just had so many things going wrong lately.
And if you get sick of the John Wayne Gacy cases, then you can check out Patreon, because we're going to have a new episode up.
Oh, yeah. When this comes out, we will have our 22nd premium episode out. Is that what it is?
I feel like it's 23rd, but I could be mistaken.
Yeah, I can't remember. But it's from 1920 England. So
very cool.
A little teaser for you. That's where we'll wrap it up, I think.
Sounds good.
So thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you. Bye.